Now it is time to start building the top half of the form, which supports the wall around the bottom of the countertop. A 3D model is shown up here in the corner showing how it goes together. On the bench is the outer frame of the upper form, which will drop inside the main form, shown here sitting on the back of my bench. The front corners of the frame will need to have a radius, so I added a block in the corners for reinforcement since much of the frame will be removed by the radius. The end board is separated into two pieces, which will make it much easier for me to cut the radius. The three pieces in the corner will get glued together as an assembly, then I will cut the radius and screw the end board onto the reinforcing block. I will also be adding gussets in the three corners to help keep it square. There is no room in the frame for the fourth corner gusset, as you will see later. In addition, I will be adding edging to the top edges to protect the edge grain of the plywood. I now have the frame components ready to go together. The front with the radiuses already cut, the two ends, the back, and the three gussets. Also shown is one of the three mounts that will locate the upper form on the lower main form. Each of the three mounts consists of a spreader that will index into the main form as well as the upper form using dowels. The mounts will be glued to the frame of the upper form, and they will properly position the upper form in the main form as well as keeping the frame of the upper form from distorting. The upper part of the mount is there to keep everything straight. A look over here at the main form, we can see how the lower part of the two other mounts index into the form. Still remaining for the main form is to create the cove around the sink plug and attach the drain to the base. I will be assembling the upper form frame off camera. I think a waste of time showing you how to drill a hole and drive a screw. Here is the layout getting ready to assemble the frame. I have assembly squares in the top corners with one of the gussets ready to glue and screw. But first I need to validate that it is square. To validate that any rectangular shape is square only requires a tape measure. Place the tape measure on one corner and measure diagonally to the opposite corner. Now do the same to the other two corners. If the distances are the same, then all four corners are square. If not, just a bit of tapping with a hammer will bring it into square. As you can see, my measurement was found to be 1/16 out of square, and considering the nature of this project, that is close enough. If I were building a cabinet, then I would ensure that it was square. Here is the upper form frame fully assembled minus the mounts. The mounts cannot be installed until I have the upper form positioned inside the main form. The next step is drilling holes for mounting the legs to the countertop. Should anybody actually be watching this video, see if you can catch the huge mistake made here. I casted a concrete block using the leg forms to use as a jig for locating the holes for the carriage bolts. This allows me to match drill the holes through both the main form walls as well as the upper form walls. Since it was cast from the same form as the actual legs, then the hole positions must be the same. Here the holes in the lower form walls are already drilled, and how I did that was to drill the first hole here on the left side, then insert a bolt through the jig before drilling the other. The bolt makes sure the concrete jig stays in place. The spacer on the left represents the thickness of the splash. It is not critical, but it does ensure both the left and right legs are mounted the same distance from the back of the countertop. Next, I will drop in the upper form to match drill those holes, making sure everything is concentric and aligned. Anybody figure out that huge mistake yet? Crap, this was an unexpected problem. Since forever, MDF in America has been 3/4 inch thick, so unfortunately, I assumed the MDF I purchased was 3/4 inch thick. The countertop designed thickness is 1 1/2 inches, so I needed to laminate two boards together to make the plug for the sink. When I dropped in the upper form, it did not fit, and I found the MDF is not 3/4 inch thick. I already knew that plywood is not what they claim it to be, so my designs account for the variations. In this case, we can see the alleged 3/4 plywood is actually 18 millimeters. Here we can see where the upper form should have been flush with the walls in the base form. Measuring, I find the plug is about 40 millimeters, indicating that the MDF is about 20 millimeters thick. 20 divided by 25.4 equals 0.787, which is not close to 3/4, making the plug 1/16 too thick. Now I have to figure out how to shave this down. All these videos were recorded 1 year before I started processing them, and I lost the video showing how it shaved it down. Not in possession of a surface planer or large drum sander, I was forced to improvise. I got out my router and a 3/4 straight bit, set it at 1/16 depth, and cut a whole bunch of dados spaced about 1/8 inch apart. With the greater majority of the material removed, I was able to then take my belt sander to remove the rest while still maintaining a flat surface. You all remember that mistake I was talking about? Well, here it is. When I placed the concrete drill jig in the form, I neglected to account for the countertop thickness. I felt pretty dumb when I found that out. I had to fill up those holes, and here you can see I now have 3 blocks representing the countertop thickness. I placed the jig on top of the blocks and re-drilled the holes. Now I'm ready to set the upper form on top of the blocks, clamp it to the side, and match drill holes through. Then I repeat the same thing for the other side. Now I have the upper form in place with spacers and blocks all around holding it in a correct position. I have the lower boards for the form mounts in place and have now marked them for dowels that will hold them to the frame of the upper form. I have already completed the mount on the left and it came out well, so now to finish the other 2. Here you see how the mount indexes into the main form with the outer dowels. Now to match drill into the frame of the upper form assisted with the dowel jig. Placing the mount onto the lower form index holes, then place the jig over the board. Move it back and forth until the drill drops in, then drill and drive in a dowel. Repeat for the other side. Before I drilled the center mount, I had to cut another spacer block to ensure it is parallel in the frame. With the spacer block in place, I can drill that last hole. Later, I will glue the dowels into the mounts and frame. Then, after adding the upper reinforcing, the upper form will be complete. Coming up in the next video, we continue to prep the main form by cutting a water retention bead around the perimeter. Be sure to subscribe to be notified when new content is published.